Hi, my name is Drea Burbank. I'm an MD technologist. This is a lecture that I gave to Rotary at an evening meeting the other day, and I had to extend it from 10 minutes to 40, so I threw in a bunch of chaos theory. They loved it. They asked me to put it online, so here it is. I apologize if it's uber nerdy. There's much shorter presentations on Empulse on our YouTube channel. So I'm Drea. I am an MD technologist. I design high tech for public health. Um, This lecture was about the city of Austin, so forgive me if it's a little bit localized. But when people come to visit Austin, we normally tourism boards, etc. They want them to think of Austin as a smart city of the future and built on authentic and meaningful roots. Instead, what people tend to see when they're visiting Austin right now is homelessness, and it's loud and it's in your face. This is what they remember when they go home to their friends and family. This is what they tell people about. And this is not the way that Austin wants to see itself. And Austin is not the only city in this boat. So, as a doctor, when you think about homelessness, we actually think, I think I have two minds about it. One is the individual mind. I think about how I treat an individual person. And one is as a public health doctor, a population setting. So I'm going to go through each in order. When I think about an individual experiencing homelessness, I think about drowning. Um, Homelessness doesn't only exist in Austin. Like both Florida, Seattle, Denver, San Francisco, all these places are experiencing homelessness, and it's likely related to climate and the pace of change, of technological change in an area, and the rate of growth of a city. Um, it's not the same thing that you see in other countries. In countries like Africa, we see things like absolute poverty, where people don't have enough to meet basic needs. And in the US, what we see is relative poverty. People who are born into this culture and are unable to participate for a variety of reasons. When I think about an individual experiencing homelessness, use the model of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Basically, until you're meeting your basic physiological needs for food, water, and rest, you're unlikely to be able to think clearly about having a job, intimate relationships, or bettering your situation. I really like the model of drowning for this. Until somebody's head breaks the water, they're not going to think clearly about getting air. And when you want to help somebody that's drowning, you don't tell them to swim harder or faster or breathe more air. You give them a life preserver, and you get a professional who knows what they're doing, because somebody who's drowning isn't going to think clearly and can actually drag you under. Um, the other reason that I think that you want a professional, and in this case, in the context of the talk I'm giving, professionals are nonprofits, is because not everybody who comes out of homelessness is cheerful about it. I don't know if you've ever been around somebody who's detoxed, but it can be really tough. And one reason to involve a professional in helping somebody who's experiencing homelessness is they know how to deal with this without judging. Um, Homelessness, I believe, is a solvable problem. There's only about 500,000 people in the US experiencing homelessness on a given night, and although arguably that's way too many, it's also something that I think that we could solve. So you see some cities have a policy of homelessness zero, and I believe that it's something that we could do something about. And it really, the number of people experiencing homelessness is markedly disproportionate to the number of people distressed about homelessness. And this is another reason why I believe it's a solvable problem in the 21st century. Um, I think one of the reasons that we all get really distressed about homelessness is that it cuts to the core of how we see ourselves as a country. So here's a young man during the civil rights movement, obviously thinking about the future of the United States and his role in it. And here's a man who fought for our country and was a veteran, thanking us for seeing him as a human being. And I think that homelessness really gets to this discrepancy, like what are we as a country and how do we see all members of our society? And what we want to be is really discrepant right now between what we want to be and what we are. Somebody who wrote really well about this topic his name is Emile Durkheim. He was a sociologist in France at the time when they were going through the Industrial Revolution, and he wrote about suicide. And he coined this term anomie. And the idea was that when society evolves technologically faster than its morals can keep up, people experience a loss of direction. So the idea that values don't fit the current society. And it leads to this perception that society is dysregulated. And he calls this anomie. And it's been correlated with depression and societal functioning in the past. And I think that right now, what we're seeing in the United States, we know that depression is going to be the leading cause of death and disability by the year 2030. And one reason I suspect is that societally, our values are not keeping up with our technology. And it's leading to this sense of anomie and societal dysregulation. And homelessness really hits us right in the solar plexus of this idea. As a public health doctor, I don't just think of homelessness as an individual. So I don't just think about rescuing one person from drowning. I think about it at a society level. And at a society level, I believe that our theory and the reality are not in sync right now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about chaos theory. So you can think about it as a kind of problem. So there's simple problems identified by this beautiful children's toy, which really stumped me when I was a kid. These are sequential steps occurring in parallel. Most of our software is designed to solve simple problems. So it's like baking a cake from a box or giving a vaccination. We do these things in order. They're a known quantity. We can train people how to do them. We can oftentimes train computers and theoretically even robots in how to do them. Then you have complicated problems. These make us feel amazing about being human beings. These are multiple components with if-then algorithmic thinking. They actually don't require us to be that smart. You can think of software that solves a complicated problem is often like misidentified as true AI, but a good example would be Google Maps. There's a number of different routes you could take. It's an algorithm, and a computer can figure it out, and a smart human can figure it out. An example would be sending a rocket ship to the moon. A rocket ship crashes, we fix our O-rings, we have a better rocket ship, we get to the moon. Diagnosing a urinary tract infection is also pretty algorithmic. In fact, unfortunately, as smart as we doctors like to think we are, most things in medicine right now are pretty algorithmic. Most medical treatments, not medical problems. And I'll get into that with the next problem. You have a complex problem. So a complex problem is where you have emergent properties. I'm going to talk about this a lot more in a minute, but these are things like raising a child or preventing obesity. You can do everything right with a child, and they're won't turn out perfect. They might end up on death row for doing something really naughty. Or you might do everything wrong with a child. I work with kids who are orphans on the street in Uganda, and they're brilliant. One of them is a jazz musician, one of the smartest people I know. The same thing goes for preventing obesity. Some people really do eat all the right things, exercise all the right amount, and still struggle with their weight. So it's not really an if-then. It's not even an algorithm. Maybe it's something we don't quite understand yet. I think human behavior falls in this category. Our best models only account for 10 to 20% of human behavior change. The best theory that we've got is never more than 50%. We really don't know what we're doing when it comes to humans. Whenever you see this extreme discrepancy between the theory and the reality, often what you're seeing is patterns that really are predictive. Most of our predictive statistics are linear, like this line here in the drawing. And when you can have a really nice pattern, but if it's a logarithmic pattern, then the statistics really aren't going to predict it very accurately. It doesn't mean that there is no pattern. It doesn't mean it's not predictable. It means that our mathematics and our predictive analytics maybe aren't predicting the same kind of pattern. Maybe it's not linear. Maybe it's not even logarithmic. When we're talking about chaos theory, the patterns are a lot more complex than that. So, somebody who thought about this a lot was Stephen Hawking. He has this gorgeous book, and in this book, he talks about this idea of model-dependent realism. And it's this idea that if you're a goldfish in a bowl and you're looking out of the bowl, it seems like all the doors are curved, and when people walk up to you, their faces get really big, and these are all predictable behaviors, but they just seem really wonky. The mathematics gets more and more crazy. And if you could just figure out that you were a goldfish in the bowl and the walls of your bowl were curved, then your math would be a lot simpler. So Stephen Hawking said, look, both mathematics work. Some mathematics are simpler than others, and all these mathematics might predict the same thing, but some of them are overly complex. I really like this idea. I use it a lot. Chaos theory is a field in mathematics. It's applied in multiple areas. I mean, right now you see most of it in meteorology, the weather. You see it sometimes in behavior change. They're starting to apply it to medical stuff, but physics for sure, engineering. I've actually heard some of the bigger software companies use it to predict software sales, and it makes their theory more accurate. Um, Chaos theory is where, I don't know if you've heard the term the butterfly effect, but it's something that happens. You can have a very small thing making a big change. All these time travel movies, they move this all across the table, and then all of a sudden there's World War III, and then they move this all back, and there's no World War III. Well, it's a similar idea. Basically, a small change in a dynamic system that's sensitive to initial conditions can create like very large effects and unpredictable effects. So that's the idea of the butterfly effect. A dynamic system, lots of change, sensitive to initial conditions. We have a finite amount of information about the system, and it's no longer predictable. We just know that you can throw everything you've got at one of these systems and nothing will change. Or you can throw a very tiny little change into the system and everything will change. Just for the record, I am using the term chaos and chaos theory and complexity theory somewhat interchangeably, but I do know that they're different. I'm not going to get into how nerdy it is and how different they are. I'm going to try and keep it pretty basic. Just keep in mind that complex systems are not always chaotic, and chaotic systems are not always complex. I'm going to talk a little bit about complexity theory as it applies to homelessness. So a complex system is dynamic, it's ever-changing. We actually know that people typically experience homelessness for no more than 3 months. When somebody experiences chronic homelessness, it's because something is wrong. So the average path down into homelessness and back is fairly short and self-limited. About 5% of the U.S. adults have been homeless at one point in their life. So it's a dynamic system, just like a complex system. Other complex systems are also open systems. When we need to look at the population of people experiencing homelessness in the U.S., it's a pretty open system. We don't know if they're from the U.S. We often don't know how long they've been homeless. We don't have an identity on all these people. And there's a lot of change. There's a lot of movement in and out. Some people who panhandle aren't even experiencing homelessness, and a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness don't panhandle. So the population of panhandling and the population of people experiencing homelessness are pretty open. Also, when you're looking at a city like Austin or a city in Florida or California, the population could be coming from other countries, other states. So that's another issue. A complex system has limited knowledge. So when we look at the population experiencing homelessness, like I said, we don't know who everybody is. We don't even know how many people are experiencing homelessness for sure on any given night. We have very limited knowledge about the system. We don't know how much money is going into panhandling. We don't know who's donating to panhandlers. We don't know how much of panhandling funds ends up in the drug economy. So there's very limited knowledge about the system of homelessness. Complex systems also exhibit path dependence, where history matters. And when you try and get somebody off the street, it really matters why they're there in the first place. Are they experiencing schizophrenia? Are they a veteran with PTSD? Are they there by choice because they're opting out of mainstream society? Are they there because of a drug addiction? There's a huge importance when it comes to history, and that is another example of a complex system. Complex systems also have feedback, so whatever comes out of the system feeds back into it, and you probably noticed that as the population of people experiencing homelessness in Austin climbs, the community reacts in various ways, and that changes the population. So there's a lot of feedback when it comes to homelessness. Also, people might end up homeless because they have a drug addiction, or they might develop a drug addiction because they're homeless and significantly distressed, or as a way to keep off hunger pangs like you see in other countries. Complex systems also evince tipping points and quantum change. So as an example, you might see the homeless population climb dramatically when you have a change in rent prices, or sometimes unexpectedly due to seasonal changes. So you see big changes and really fast. And I think it can go the reverse as well. Like some towns have gotten to homelessness zero with really interesting policies. And so I think we need to expect that homelessness will exhibit quantum change either in a direction we want or in a direction we don't. But they are susceptible to that. Sorry, cities' homelessness populations are susceptible to that. Also complex systems, and if you just remember one thing from this lecture, this is probably the most important thing to remember. Complex systems can absorb everything you throw at them. You can put all the money in the world into a city with homelessness and it might not change it at all. But they can also respond very fast to very small changes. And it's not always easy to predict which change is going to have the most effect. So when you see somebody throwing a lot of resources into something and it not making a budge, you can kind of guess that you're looking at a complex system, a pattern that hasn't been characterized and might not be characterizable. So if you take away basics from this, homelessness is most likely a complex system. That means it has non-linear relationships. It is probably impossible to predict, and the effects of homelessness are not proportional to the stimuli. So good news, actually, there is a way to deal with complex systems. You just got to change the way that you're expecting them to react to you. So the best way to think about a complex system when you're dealing with changing it is like a big pan of popcorn. I don't know if you've ever popped popcorn, but there are some kernels that are just not going to pop no matter what you throw at them. And then some kernels pop right away. And when you're looking at a population of people experiencing homelessness, it's best to think of them like popcorn. You don't know what each individual kernel is going to do, but you can do some things to the whole batch of popcorn to make it more likely that more people will change. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing with complexity theory is you have to understand the history. So that's why nonprofits are so beneficial when it comes to helping people off the street, and why in my experience, the most effective change I've seen has been through really talented nonprofits who were very experienced. And they really take the time to get to know each individual person's history and give them unique treatments. They design for person, place, and time, also something you do in a complex system. So they tailor the intervention based on the person's history, what they need at that moment, and how fast they're progressing. That's why you really need that one-on-one touch in order to help somebody off the street. Also, when you're designing for change in a complex system, you need to embrace uniqueness and be open to surprises. People are not going to there might not be predictable. So it's best to just sit back and listen to somebody tell you where they're at on any given day and expect that they're going to change in unique and surprising ways. Also something nonprofits are great at. Complexity theory, if you want to change a complex system, you don't throw a lot of resources into a system, you deliver a lot of small changes and you just see what it takes. So that's why street nurses are great. Like there's a street nurse in Austin I met the other day, and she was amazing. And she talks to these guys every single day. Every day asks them, hey, do you want to go into housing today? So she's just delivering more interventions more frequently. The other thing you do is you heat the griddle. So you don't just like hit people from one direction, you hit them from multiple directions. So you give them a shelter that's low barrier to entry. You also give them a way to take care of their pets. You have a street nurse meeting them on the street. You have positive messaging from the city and from the police, encouraging people to seek help. And you kind of increase services in the entire environment rather than just expecting one thing to work. You also anticipate quantum change. You don't know when, or how somebody will change, but they can change very fast. And because it's a complex system and human behavior is a complex system, it evinces quantum change, emergent opportunities, and malleable moments. You don't know when those are going to come up, but when they do, they can be quite significant. So with all of that said, that's the background. So I talked about the problem in Austin. I talked about how I think about individual change from a one-on-one perspective when I'm helping someone, and then I talked about how I think about change in a population. Now I want to talk about the Empulse app. The Empulse is a butterfly effect solution that we came up with from Stanford University. So I have a consulting company for high tech and medicine. I like to say we're delinquent savants, and sometimes people put us to work on tough problems. In this case, Stanford University was gracious enough to let us work on this problem, and we came up with the Empulse app. So the Empulse app is a butterfly effect solution for homelessness. These are the Stanford professors who worked on the app. Nima Agapur is a professor of machine learning. Judith Prochaska is a well-recognized expert in behavior change. And Nirav Shah has been involved in some of the coolest public health initiatives I've seen, like leading Kaiser. This is my much more delinquent group of programmers and consultants from my consulting agency, and they work together on the Empulse app. We designed the app to be like Shazam. The idea was that people don't always buy music in a linear fashion. Sometimes they buy it impulsively just when they feel like it. And so while many people plan out their homeless and charitable giving, we thought that maybe they might want to do it impulsively as well. So the idea behind the Empulse app is that somebody can download the app, see the nonprofits nearby, and then give to all of them at once with small micro donations, maybe only $1. We thought this might have a butterfly effect. So I tell people that Empulse is an app for tourists to buy services for people and pets experiencing homelessness, and the services are delivered by nearby nonprofits. That's because the nonprofits in Austin know the landscape better in Austin, and the nonprofits in San Francisco know the landscape better in San Francisco, and on and on and on. I think that while this problem of poverty might be universal, the best solutions are local. Remember, calling back to that designing for person, place, and time. So our goals with Empulse are to reduce homelessness, to increase charitable giving among millennials, and to create smart cities everyone loves. So I'll talk about how we're doing that. First off, reducing homelessness. We think that Empulse is more equitable. Only about 5 to 40% of people experiencing homelessness panhandle. So when you only give cash on the street to the person who's asking, you might not be getting money to everybody who needs it, and you're definitely not preventing homelessness. We think that Empulse is more efficient. Where if you give out $20 downtown, it usually will buy about a meal. But if you give $20 to the Austin Food Bank, it will buy 80 meals. That's because they have government funds matching and relationships with local grocery stores and distribution centers. They can just have a much stronger impact for a lot less money. We also think Empulse is more effective. The evidence on this is widely varying. If you talk to the police versus if you talk to some of the more passionate nonprofits. But the only studies I've seen estimate that about 30% of panhandling funds are spent on addictions. So we want to take at least that 30% and redirect it to nonprofits who, like I said, are professionals who design for person, place, and time and provide longitudinal care in a structured way. So increased charitable giving. Most people don't know this, but the charitable giving for individual human services was about $49 billion in 2018. 80% of that was from individual households. But that has decreased by about 11% since 2011. And sorry, I get the numbers wrong there. Since 2011. And I think that one of the reasons might be that people just aren't carrying cash anymore, and they do a lot of their banking on mobile. And the Apple iTunes store forbid nonprofits to collect donations until the year 2016. So it's an artificially restricted market, and a lot of people could be giving that aren't on their phones. So smart goals. Smart cities everyone loves. I think that we actually could hit homelessness zero, and we need to plan better interventions based on chaos theory. We do need to be smart cities, and we need to be smart about homelessness. And I think that we need to think about designing for all of these cities where high tech is growing really fast, because not only is it making people who are experiencing homelessness unhappy and missing basic needs, it's also hurting the rest of us who have to see this and feel Anomie. So we made this map of charitable giving. Obviously, Empulse is just getting started. I encourage you all to download it and use it today. If we don't have a nonprofit in your area yet, if we see donations, we will get one. And you can always send the nonprofits to us to sign up for free. We don't charge them. But here's the donations, and this map is free to policymakers and nonprofit planners. So people always ask about our business structure. We are a for-profit social impact company. We are structured for impact, 100%. So we have $1. We make our money the app is free. We make our money from $1 app upgrade to the paid app, which should be available this year. We get 1% of donations plus interest because we pay out once every 6 months to a year. If nonprofits want to get paid out more frequently, if they have a lot of money in their account, they can pay $10 and advertise on the app and get money out whenever they want. But right now, the service is free to nonprofits and will always be free. They just have to either wait till the annual or biannual donations. We also count impact as a big part of our revenue. So if you are experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles, the evidence shows that you can cost the system up to $100,000 a year in emergency room visits and police citations, etc. So we can actually save the system quite a bit of money. Although right now we're free to the cities, and we won't be charging for the data to either cities or researchers. We have a website. We have a free app in both the iTunes and Android store. So just to be clear about our goals, I don't just want to treat this man more empathically. And I don't just want to reach boyhood dreams for this boy. I really want to blow this problem out of the water once and for all and solve the problem of homelessness. And that's what Empulse was designed to do. So you're welcome to contact me. Please send me nonprofits that want to sign up. If you know any impact investors that want to be part of the app, I'd be happy to talk to them. Please download the app and use it for free today. Like I said, this is a butterfly effect, and I think we could have a significant change. Thanks. Bye.